Myself, Mr. H.T. Mate, Department of Botany, RBNB College, Sri Rampur. Today we are going to study the F.Y.B.Sc Botany, semester 2nd, paper 1st, BO 121. And from this, plant life and utilization 2nd. And the name of the topic number 2, Pteridophytes. And from this topic, we are going to study the reproduction in the Nephrolepis. So in the Nephrolepis, there is the lip, and from the lower surface of the liplet, there are some reproductive structures, and they are called as the sori. And in the sori, there is a group of the sporangia, and in each sporangia, there is a sporogenous tissue. This sporogenous tissue divides meiotically into a spore tetrad. Finally, all these 4 cells or spores from the spore tetrad get separate, and they are haploid, and they are called as the spore. So this is the spore. Now, if the conditions are favorable, that means the proper temperature, moisture, etc. are there, then this spore, which is haploid, it germinates and it forms a germ tube, and this germ tube is again divided into the 2 unequal cells. From this, the lower cell is called as the rhizoidal initial cell, and the upper large cell is called as the prothallus cell. Now, this rhizoidal cell is get developed into the rhizoid, while this prothallus cell is get developed into the Prothallus, or into the next generation in the life cycle of the Nephrolepis, which is also called as the gametophyte. So this is the detailed structure of the Prothallus or the gametophyte. It is heart-shaped in outline, and toward its anterior side there is a notch, and toward the lower side it is narrow, and toward upper side it is very broad, and toward the upper side it is a multi-layered, and from the lower side it is a single layered, and all these cells are chlorophyllous in nature. That means they perform the function of a photosynthesis. So this newly formed generation, that is a gametophyte, is independent because it has the chlorophyllous tissue. They perform the function of a photosynthesis. Now just below the notch there is the cushion. So this is the part of the cushion, and in the cushion part the female reproductive structures are getting developed, and they are called as the archegonia. Now they are toward the upper surface, toward the upper side, and toward the lower side there is the male reproductive structure, and they are called as the antheridia. So antheridia is the male reproductive structure, and toward the posterior side there are the rhizoid, and these rhizoids are important for absorption of water, mineral, and also for anchorage. So this is all about the Prothallus or the gametophyte, which is the 2nd generation in the life cycle of the Nephrolepis. Now the structure of the reproductive structures. First, that is the male reproductive structure, which is called as the antheridia. It is somewhat circular in outline. It is a sessile, that means it do not have stalk, and it is embedded in the thallus tissue of the gametophyte, that means here. So this is the antheridia. Now it has 3 wall layers. So these are the 3 wall layers, and at the apical side there is the cap, or it is also called as a cover or a lead cell. And inside this there are very large number of the cells, and all these cells are called as the anthrozoid mother cell. Now these are the anthrozoid mother cell. They get metamorphosed into another structure, and that structure is called as the anthrozoid. So this is the anthrozoid. Now when they get matured, they get released out this antheridia, and this is the spiral structure of the anthrozoid. So this is the upper part is the body, and toward the lower part there is the flagella. And if the water is there, now this anthrozoid, with the help of this flagella, by swimming, finally they reaches up to the female reproductive structure, that is the archegonia, for the process of fertilization, but it happens when there is water only. So this is about the male reproductive structure. Now that is the female reproductive structure, which is called as the archegonia. And here in this Nephrolepis, it is inverted. That means it is getting divided into the 2 parts. Upper part, which is called as the venter here, and the lower part, which is called as the neck. So in the neck there is the neck canal cell, and in the venter there is the ventral canal cell, and above this there is very large bulbous egg cell is there. And this female reproductive structure is also getting embedded in the thallus tissue of the gametophyte. So here there is the egg. Now after this, when both this anthrozoid and this egg becomes mature, and if the water is there, Now, at the time of fertilization, very large number of the anthrozoid swims through a thin film of water and finally reaches up to the here. That means up to the neck. Now, before this, all of these neck canal cell and ventral canal cell get disorganized to form a mucilaginous structure. This mucilaginous structure is strongly hydrophilic in nature, and it absorbs very large amount of the water, which exerts a pressure on this cover or lid cell. So these are the cover or lid cell. And because of this pressure, this cover or lid cell get opened, and finally the anthrozoid which comes here, they enters here in the neck, and from a neck it finally reaches up to the egg, and there is a union or fertilization of the egg takes place, and there is the formation of a zygote. Now zygote is getting developed by division, redivision into the embryo, and finally this embryo is getting developed into the new sporophytic plant, which is diploid. Now it is diploid because here zygote is also diploid, and because of this embryo, all the cells of embryo are diploid, and the newly formed Nephrolepis plant, it is also diploid, and it is called as a sporophytic because it gives the spore. Now this structure, that is antheridia and archegonia, they are haploid because they are developed from the spore, and this spore is already haploid because they are developed by meiosis. So this female reproductive structure and male reproductive structure both are haploid, but after fertilization this zygote is diploid. So the next generation, that is the diploid. Now next point, that is alternation of a generation. In the life cycle of the Nephrolepis, there are two distinct generations. One, that is the sporophytic generation, which we called as the Nephrolepis plant, and second, that is the gametophytic generation. Now here in this life cycle of the Nephrolepis, the sporophytic generation is dominant as compared to the gametophytic generation. Now this is the habit of the Nephrolepis plant. So this is the lip, and on this lip there are the liplets. Now this is the dorsal surface or dorsal view of the lip, and here this is the ventral view of the lip. Now on this ventral view, that means from lower side there are the reproductive structures, and they are called as the sorus or sori. Now in this sori there are the sporangia, and in the sporangia there are the spores, and in this sporangia sporogenous tissue is there, and all these cells are called as the spore mother cell. So this is one spore mother cell. Now it is a diploid. Now this spore mother cell is getting divided meiotically into a meiospore tetrad. So this is called as the tetrad. Here there are the 4 newly formed cells, 3 from front side and 1 is from the back side. And from these 4, this is one spore which is haploid now because it is formed after reduction division. Now this spore which is haploid is germinate, and it forms a small germ tube. And finally this germ tube is getting metamorphosed into a next generation. So this is the sporophytic generation, this is the gametophytic generation. That means this spore is developed into germ tube finally by division and redivision get developed into the next generation, which is called as the prothallus or the gametophyte. Now this is the prothallus or the gametophyte, which is heart shaped, and it develops the 2 different types of the reproductive structures. Toward the upper side there is the archegonia, and toward the lower side there are the antheridia. So in the archegonia there is the egg, so this is the egg, and in the antheridia there is the anthrozoid mother cell, and from this anthrozoid mother cell this anthrozoid is get formed. Now when both this, that means this anthrozoid and egg becomes mature, then fertilization takes place and there is a formation of a zygote. Now here diploid generation is starts because this zygote is diploid in nature. So from zygote diploid generation is get a start, so it is called as the sporophytic generation or diploid generation. Now this zygote is get developed into the embryo, and finally from this embryo a new plant, that is the sporophytic generation, that is the new Nephrolepis plant is get formed. So this is the one generation, that is the sporophytic generation, which is dominant, and this is the second generation, that is it is short lived, and it is called as the prothallus or gametophyte. So in the life cycle of the Nephrolepis there are alternation of the generation, that is sporophytic generation alternates with the gametophytic generation, and again gametophytic generation alternates with the sporophytic generation.